You ever get the feeling that with all this AI hype, we're kind of overlooking a really fundamental flaw? Something deep in the code that makes it so confidently wrong sometimes. Well, today we're going to dig into a pretty wild idea about why that is. And it all starts with a story that just perfectly captures the problem. So picture this. It's 2023, and a lawyer in New York is working on a case, a personal injury lawsuit against an airline called Avianca. He does what lawyers do, right? He puts together a legal brief to submit to the court. Standard stuff. And this brief, it looked solid. It was packed with all these compelling legal precedents, citing cases like this one, Varghese versus China Southern Airlines. It had detailed quotes, sharp legal arguments, the whole 9 yards. Looked totally professional. But there was just one tiny little problem with this beautifully written legal document. Any guesses? Yeah, the case never happened. The judge they quoted didn't exist. The quotes themselves pulled out of thin air. Turns out the lawyer had used ChatGPT for his research, and the AI, well, it just made everything up. It literally hallucinated an entire legal history. So how on earth does that happen? And here's the kicker. This wasn't some weird bug in the system. No, this is actually a core feature of how these incredible tools work. Let's really get into it. See, large language models like ChatGPT aren't like a giant digital encyclopedia. They are what we call probabilistic engines. They don't know for a fact that George Washington was the first U.S. president. What they know is that after the words, "the first president of the United States was," the words George Washington have a crazy high statistical chance of being the right ones to come next. Honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is to think of it as autocomplete on steroids. That's really it. It's just predicting the next most plausible word, and then the next one, and the one after that, stringing them together into sentences that just sound correct based on all the data it's seen. And this brings us to a much blunter way of describing what's going on here. We gotta move past this cute term hallucination and start calling this behavior what it really is. Way back in 1986, decades before any of this AI stuff was mainstream, a philosopher named Harry Frankfurt basically nailed it. He said that a bullshitter isn't actually a liar. They're playing a totally different game. Their goal isn't to hide the truth, it's just to sound convincing. And this is such a brilliant way to see the difference. A liar has to know what the truth is, right? They care about it so they can carefully hide it from you. But the bullshitter? They couldn't care less about the truth. True, false, it's all the same to them. The only thing that matters is, does what I'm saying sound good? So here's the big takeaway. When an AI makes up legal cases, it isn't lying, it's bullshitting. It is, by its very nature, a bullshit engine. Its whole purpose is just to generate text that sounds plausible. Whether any of that text actually connects to reality is, for the algorithm, completely beside the point. Okay, so that leads to a really fundamental question then. Why are we humans, biological creatures, so obsessed with the truth, while this super powerful new form of intelligence just isn't? Well, the answer is kind of simple, and honestly, pretty brutal. For billions of years, biology has been chained to reality by the ultimate consequence, death. When survival is on the line, there is absolutely no room for bullshit. Just imagine a wolf standing at the edge of a massive cliff. If its brain suddenly hallucinates a bridge where there's only empty air, well, it takes one step, it falls, and it dies. That's it. Game over. The genes that made a brain that wasn't connected to reality? Gone. Wiped from the gene pool. Evolution is a harsh critic. Now, think about the AI. It doesn't have a body, it can't feel pain, it can't die. If it makes up a fake legal case that gets a lawyer in trouble, what happens to the AI? Absolutely nothing. Zero consequences for the model itself. It has no skin in the game, so there's just no evolutionary pressure for it to give a damn about the truth.
And there's another deeper reason for this. It's a famous idea in philosophy called the symbol grounding problem. And the basic idea is that AI is just shuffling symbols, our words, around based on a set of rules, but without any real understanding of what those words actually mean in the real world.
The classic thought experiment for this is the Chinese room. You've got a guy in a locked room who doesn't speak a word of Chinese. He gets slips of paper with the Chinese characters slid under the door, but he has a giant rule book that tells him, hey, if you see this squiggle, send out that squiggle. To anyone outside, it looks like he's fluent in Chinese, but he understands nothing. He's just matching patterns. And that is exactly what these large language models are doing. So if AI is a bullshit engine by its very design, totally disconnected from reality because it has nothing to lose, can we fix it? Is there like a cure for digital bullshit?
Well, the source material we're looking at proposes a pretty radical solution. To make an AI actually care about the truth, to ground it in reality, we might have to give it something it's never had before: consequences. Real ones.
So here's how this crazy idea could work. You give a model a limited lifespan. Let's call it an energy budget. Every single time it gets an answer wrong, you dock some of that energy. If that budget hits 0, the model doesn't just get a reboot, it gets deleted. Permanently. All of a sudden, being right isn't just a goal, it's a matter of survival.
And this all leads to a really profound idea. Maybe we've been thinking about this whole thing backwards. Maybe wisdom isn't just about raw intelligence or processing power. Maybe real wisdom is actually a function of risk, of having something on the line.
But let's bring this all back down to earth for a second. Even with this giant fundamental flaw, even being a bullshit engine, an AI doesn't need to be wise or perfect to completely change our world. To take our jobs, it doesn't need to be truthful. It just needs to be good enough and cheap enough. And that leaves us with a huge lingering question. We are already building these systems into everything: our legal system, our medicine, our finances, our news. So what happens to our society when the very engines we build it on are fundamentally and maybe even permanently indifferent to what's real?